Good morning, everyone. It's Phil Wade from Dalton Wade Real Estate Group, and today it's Phil and Claren here holding the phone. We're going to be chatting about the as-is contract versus the residential contract. So most people are familiar with the as-is contract because that's used probably in about 98% of the cases, but sometimes you as a listing agent might receive someone doing the contract on the residential contract form, or as a buyer's agent you may want to submit it on the residential contract form. So we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between the two and when it's applicable to use one versus the other. So there's really three differences, and one is a very simple difference, and that's the title. So you always want to look, whether you're the listing agent or the buyer's agent, which contract is this? Because I've reviewed contracts for people and they've put them on the wrong one. So they look very, very much the same. So you want to be careful to make sure you really know which one you're using. So that's a simple difference. But the two main differences are this. So basically with the as-is contract, for any reason, the buyer can walk away from the contract. They don't even have to do a home inspection. They've got an automatic out. And for the seller with the as-is contract, they don't have to actually repair anything. They're under no obligation to do any repairs, give any credits. The deal may fall apart on them, but they're not obligated in any way to do that. They have to sort of agree after the fact. So that's a major difference. Also, with the residential contract, the repair items, general repairs, permit repairs, termite and wood destroying organism repairs, that amount is all calculated up front. So basically what the seller is saying to the buyer is, and it's usually 1.5% of the purchase price, so I will fix up to 1.5% of the purchase price, and I'm telling you this in advance. And by me telling you this in advance, you can't if I perform on my end, you can't back out on your end. So the buyer is kind of on the hook. I mean, obviously they can still lose their deposit and walk away for that. But other than that, as long as the seller, makes those repairs, which up front they're agreeing to do, the buyer can't walk away. The buyer is committed to that house. So that repair section is very different depending on which contract you use. The repair amounts on the residential contract are found in the seller closing cost section of the contract. So it's a big difference between the two. And then the other major difference is regarding permits. So with the as-is contract, the seller is telling the buyer that they'll use their best efforts to close out any permits, to open any permits for work that hasn't been done, but they're not, obligated beyond, giving their best effort. So they don't actually have to close them out if they are open. So they're not committing to do that. Under the residential contract, they're committing up front to spend a certain dollar amount if there are open permits to close those permits out. So they're telling the buyer, and then if the amount exceeds what's already been agreed to up front, then the contract can be canceled by either party and the deposit given back. So difference one is the titling. Simple. Difference two is as it relates to the inspection, and difference three is relates to permits. So those are the main meat kind of differences between the two. So the question is, okay, when would you use one versus the other? So everybody's very familiar with the as-is contract because that's used in 99% of the cases. When might you? So if you're the listing agent and you've got like a stellar home, meaning you had a pre-inspection done and it found nothing, and then you did the permit search and there are no open permits, everything has been permitted, that house is in pristine shape, and a buyer, when they do their inspection, is going to find nothing. So that's when you might consider for your seller, using the residential contract, and you'd want to have this discussion with your seller. Okay, which contract, when we get an offer, are we going to ask that buyer to put it on? And the reason why you would do that is because there's no inspection items to be found. The house is in great shape. So really what you've then got from that buyer is a commitment that they're going to move forward, because we all know sometimes buyers go into a house, they may be making offers on a couple houses, the husband likes it, but the wife's maybe not quite as enthusiastic about it, and then the deal craters really for no reason, not even because there were inspection items not found, and you had to take it off the market. So this kind of prevents that from happening. So that's one place where a seller might want to use that. A buyer might want to use that when, and again, a lot of times you'll see in the realtor remarks, it'll tell you which contract to put it on. Now, if that isn't there, you might try using the residential contract if you're the buyer's agent, if you know there's going to be repairs. If you already know there's going to be some items that are going to come out of that just through your visual observation when you were showing them the house, you may want to put it on the residential contract, so that way the seller is agreeing to fix things, right? The downside for the buyer is if the seller does fix things, they do have to move forward, and if they don't, they would forfeit, their deposit. So, that's kind of when they make sense to use. If you have questions as an agent, give me a call and we can kind of work through it. Again, it's not your call as to kind of which contract gets used. It's really your clients. But I mean, obviously you're advising them, you're helping them understand the differences. If you're the buyer's agent and it says use, the as-is contract, then obviously that's what, they're asking for it to be done. And as the buyer's agent, you should comply with that. Claren, any questions?
Yeah. So I have a listing that I just got under contract, and the buyer's agent sent it over on the non-as-is, the residential one. So they had repair caps, but he also included an addendum for the right to inspect and cancel. So he got the best of both worlds. I warned my seller about what it meant, and he was okay with it. So in this case, it's kind of both. Like, they get the repair cap, and then they also get they get to inspect and cancel for any reason if they want to. So just be careful of that.
Yeah, that's really a great point, and that's something I neglected to mention, because they really shouldn't get the both of best worlds.
Right.
Both of best worlds. I mean, because they're really getting the as is by putting that inspection contingency in there. So if they find anything, they can still get out. Plus, they're getting your client to agree to.
Yep.
So that
he was fine with it. So I was like, okay.
Right.
And also, so I had a question. So we have a repair cap for general repairs of $2,500. We negotiated it down from 1.5%. So basically, I was reading what kind of the description of what the seller would be responsible for, and it's kind of saying that, like, if things aren't in working order, he'd have to fix them. But if the age of the AC is just old, but it's working fine, can the buyer ask him to replace the AC or give them a credit for it? And he could say no because it's in general working condition.
Yeah, I mean, I think he could say no. I mean, general working condition, I believe, free of leaks, everything is working. There are some more nuances to the residential contract, and obviously, gets into sort of more, interpretation of what that all means, and, can cause some confusion sometime. Literally that's what it means. Things are working, and if it's old, it's working.
So he could say no, or he could be nice and help them.
Pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, so that's kind of how that works. So again, I think, for simplicity purposes, and this is probably why, the as-is contract is used so often, is because it's just cleaner, easier to use, easier to understand, less kind of, vagaries, between what does something mean. And that's why I choose. But there is a time when it could be beneficial for a buyer or a seller to have it, put on the residential contract. So again, any questions, and it's something as an agent, why we're having this training is you really should be aware, of the differences and be able to speak to them, with your client. So cool. Any questions in Facebook land? know, sometimes it's a little harder. You can only comment rather than ask a direct question. But if you do have any questions, you can send me an email or give me a call, and we can chat further. Thanks for watching.